Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at Banjo, the Australovenator. This is a figure I've been wanting to add to my collection for a very long time. This Australovenator is produced by the Australian Age of Dinosaur Museum. That's actually where the specimen is currently being housed. This figure came out about 6 or 7 years ago, and then it's been out of production for I think a couple years. It's been pretty hard to track down, but good news is the Australian Age of Dinosaur Museum did another production run on this figure. It currently retails for $20, and I'll leave a link down below in the description if you want to order this figure for yourself. And just a word of advice, once you order this figure from them, you do not get a shipping notification. It's just going to randomly show up in the mail, so that's just something to keep in mind. Now, there is no difference with this release versus the previous release. The only difference is it does not come in that nice collector packaging, but it's not a really big deal for most of us that take their figures out of the packaging. Now, this figure does ship in a bubble mailer, and it's really not that protected, but my figure did arrive in great condition, so that's also another thing to keep in mind. So it does come on this plastic stand to prevent the figure from warping. Like I said, it came all the way from Australia to jolly old New England, and it arrived nice, safe, and sound. You do get a little pamphlet with some information about Australovenator on the arm, and that is pretty much it for the packaging. So let's throw this thing up on the turntable and take a closer look. And let's have a nice 360-degree view of the Australovenator. I have to say, I am quite impressed with this figure. It reminds me of a Papo product from the build material, the very active and lifelike sculpt, and just a really nice paintwork. Pretty much the whole figure, if you handed it to me, I'll guess it's a Papo figure. Everything but the eye. The eye paint is just a little bit lacking on this figure. But other than that, I love the super active pose. Australovenator is the most complete theropod dinosaur from Australia, which isn't saying much. Most Australian dinosaurs are very, very incomplete, but it is from the late Cretaceous period, and it was known as the cheetah of its time. And you can see the way this figure is sculpted. It looks like a very fast and agile predator. Now, Australovenator, let's get the camera to focus back in on it. Australovenator is a type of Megaraptora. They are a group of theropod dinosaurs that had very large and powerful forearms. Most had two very, very large claws, which are highlighted on this figure, followed by a very small claw on the last finger. And I have to say, I really, really like this figure. I can understand why a lot of people enjoyed it, and I'm really glad the Australian Age of Dinosaur Museum did another run of this figure. It's definitely a really, really cool piece to add to your collection. And now let's do a couple quick measurements on Banjo. This figure, if you measure along the curve of the tail, is about 9 1/4 inches long, or 23.5 centimeters, and at the hip it's about 2 3/4 inches, or just under 7 centimeters. So Australovenator in real life was around 20 feet long, or 6 meters. So with those measurements, I put this figure somewhere in the 128 scale range. If you use the measurement for the hip region to put this figure in 125 scale, it's billed as a 124 scale figure, so the measurements do add up. So it's a little big to scale with, most of our collection. A lot of us collect, between like 135 and 140 scale, but, there's really not many figures of the species out there. Collecte has one, and I ran into some other random Australovenator figure when I was just researching this figure. It was like Dr. Steve's Dino dig thing. But out of those three, this is definitely the best looking one. And let's zoom in and take a look at some of the finer details on this figure, starting with that really, sinister looking head. This thing looked like an absolute terror. It has scale detail all over the body. You can see there's a nice wash over the head to bring out all those little scale details. The eye is painted yellow with a black pupil. The eye is kind of sloppily painted, but the rest of the paint job on the figure is really, really well done. You can see some black striping mixing in with all that brown and yellow. The teeth are nicely painted in white. Looking inside the mouth, you do have a matte coat of pink paint for the back of the throat and the tongue. You actually can see the esophagus sculpted in right there. That is a neat little touch. Here is the head from the front. You can see the eyes are just a little bit wonky looking at my figure, and then here is a view from the top of the head, and then on the underside you can see some nice, very fine scale details on the lower part of the jaw, and then going down to the neck, you do have some bright yellow for the base of the neck, and then you have all these very large crocodile-looking scales going all the way down the body, especially on the top part. You have all those like large crocodile-looking scutes. So, you know, I'm not a big fan of that look, but since Australovenator is from Australia, and you know there's a lot of things in Australia that can kill you, especially the crocodiles. I don't mind it, especially since the overall color scheme of the figure kind of reminds me of the Australian freshwater crocodiles. I guess a nice little homage to to native Australian wildlife. So it's really not bothering me as much if it was like on a Spinosaurus figure. That always drive me nuts, that crocodile look. And then going down to the forearms, you can see the signature Megaraptora. Really powerful looking muscular forearms. You can see the bicep in there is just swelled, really well done on that. The hand claws are beautifully sculpted. Look how large the thumb claw is, and the second claw just absolutely huge. There was a study on the mobility of Australovenator's arms, and they were quite mobile. They can pull prey into its chest to allow the weak jaws to feed on its prey. That is all from Wikipedia. And then going down to the body, you can see more of all that nice scale detail picked out with all these little black spots. You do have a dash of white highlighted by black. You can actually see it better on the other side of the figure. You get some more black markings and some cream coat with a nice dark wash, bringing out all those side scales underneath the body. I wish there was a little bit more of a wash to kind of subdue all that bright yellow. It makes the figure look a little bit unfinished, but it's really not that big of a deal. You can see some of that white, and it just goes into the base yellow plastic for the figure. Kind of wish underneath the feet were also painted, but that's not a big deal. You can have this figure stand up in your shelf. You're not really gonna be looking at the undersides of the feet. You do have a very visible seam on the hind legs, but really not that big of a deal. This is a museum that's producing the figure, and I think they did a great job on it. Got some nice powerful thigh muscles and calf muscles going down to the feet. You see the toe claws are decked out in a glossy brown paint, and then looking at it from the top, you see more of those crocodile looking scales. And then going down to the tail has a slightly thick tail base, and then it really tapers down really quick to a very whip-like looking tip, but there's all nice little paint details all the way down to the tip of the tail. You can see all those little tiny specks of black paint, and it's just a nice banded pattern. So yeah, they did a really nice job painting this figure. Definitely worth the 20 bucks in my book. Moving on with comparisons, first up, let's do Collect A's little 1/40 scale human. And let's do some Megaraptora species. There's really not many figures of them out there. First up here is Collect A's Raptor, and next up is Vitae's Chialingosaurus. And I do have the Collect A Neovenator. I think it's part of Megaraptora, or it's just outside it. But anyways, yeah, I can't find that figure. I have no clue where I tossed that ugly green figure. And next up here is Safari's Iguanodon, which I'm just gonna sub in for Muttaburrasaurus. Maybe the Australian Museum of Age of Dinosaurs Museum will do Muttaburrasaurus sometime in the future. I'd love a nice figure of that dinosaur. And let's compare it to some other classic dinosaur species. Here it is with PNSO's Spinosaurus. Hopefully one day they'll give us a more updated, larger version. And here is their Triceratops. And lastly, every dinosaur comparison has to have a T-Rex. Here it is with, come on Banjo, stand up. There we go. Here it is with Wilson. So final thoughts on Banjo. I really like this figure. I'm always excited to add a new dinosaur species to my collection. For $20, it's a really nice figure. The whole figure is covered in beautiful scale detail from head to toe. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of those crocodile-like scales on the back and on the tail, but all that sculpt work is really well done. I love how the arms came out with those very long, sharp claws. Has a nice, super active running pose, and the paint job is really well done, and it's definitely worth the $20. Like I said, I've been wanting this figure for a really long time. I had a tough time trying to track one down the last couple of years, and I just eventually forgot about it until someone pointed out that they were doing another production run of this figure. And like I said at the beginning of the review, if you want to pick one up for yourself, there's a link down below in the description to the Australian Age of Dinosaur Museum where you can order this figure directly. And just remember what I said, once you order it, they're just going to ship it out. You're not going to get a shipping notification. And since it's coming from Australia, it's probably going to take at least a couple weeks to get to you. So that will do it for the review. I have the new PNSO Acrocanthosaurus coming, which I can't wait for. If you've been a long-time fan of the channel, you know I'm a huge Acrocanthosaurus fan, so that is going to be a super fun review. Hopefully that gets here soon. I have some stuff coming in from Ancestor Models and Dino Zoo, and I'm sure more Jurassic World merchandise will be hitting really soon before the movie comes out. So that will do it. As always, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, show your support by hitting that subscription button just below the video. Each subscription helps out the channel tremendously and is greatly appreciated. And I'll see you guys for the next one.